everything. Thank you, God, for everything. You hear my little dog? She is, last night, it was so funny because I was, I was, I was in the bed. You know how, I don't know if you do this, but I could be asleep and all of a sudden I hear her up at the front window, like barking at God knows what, at what time of the morning. And, a couple of nights ago when I heard her out there barking, I got up and went and um, got her and put her back in in her room and went back to bed. But last night I was just thinking to myself, let her do what she does. Because I already got in the bed really late last night because I signed up to go to a ministry development class. And a ministry development class. And in that ministry development class, they went, because it's out in California, the class is done over Zoom. It's out in California. And so they went until like midnight, like it was nothing. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't say that because I think I dropped off at about 11 something. And getting up at 5 a.m. is crazy. So Stephanie just she just yes. She just sent me a message saying, please send out prayers for her granddaughter, Syven. She is, she had just had that heart surgery and they have a pacemaker, I do believe, on her. And so Stephanie was saying that her numbers are not where they need to be. And so we see these numbers just increasing. One of the wonderful things that I know about and I have been learning about is that we appear as solid beings. And I talk about this all the time because one of the things that I know is that when we were in elementary school and grade school, we learned that that everything is made up of atoms and things appear to be solid, but really in actuality, we are made up of a bunch of cells, atoms, a proton, a neutron inside of that resides inside of the nucleus. And all of these things, we are an amalgamation of that. So while I appear to be solid, I feel solid, there is a fluidity about you and I. There is a fluidness in our bodies. And each of these cells, as we come into awareness of it, each of these cells are doing exactly what they are supposed to do. And when they go astray, when a cell is not necessarily doing its own function, that is the start of what we call dis-ease or cancer or something like that. And so what we do is laser focus, right? I've never met Syven, but as I recognize her grandmother, Stephanie, who I do know, I am sending laser focus energy right into that very area that she needs. And feeling that oxygen as it just, as it enlivens all of her cells and begins to move things just as they are supposed to be. And sometimes what happens is there needs to be a reset because our cells, our whole bodies have an intelligence to them. This universe has an intelligence to it. And while it may go askew for a moment, its tendency is to right itself. And so if we hold our attention on that rightness, right? When we hold our attention on the things righting themselves and not pay attention to the things that seem like they're going askew, we stand over here and wait, knowing that it is done. And so we claim that. We claim that throughout that child's body, knowing that it is, all of that is just moving in the way that there is no difficulty, no strain in this. It is just nature doing what nature does. And so we hold that space to know that that force, that vibrational force is now doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. We send it love and light and perfect energy. And as we stand in that space, oh, we just give thanks. We give thanks that it is done already. So I'm sending light and love and blessings and surrounding them and knowing, here's the other thing. We know that two things cannot occupy, a positive and a negative. They can't occupy the same space at the same time. One cancels out the other, or they render each other neutral. Right? And so we stand on the side of the positive, of the faith. So that's why I'm saying we stand in the solution, not in the problem. We don't even focus on that because that is a non-entity. We stand in the solution, knowing that it is working itself out. And we just stand there in a place of faith and let it do what it does. Oh my goodness, it's so good. It's so good. And that's one of the things that when they do training for, for people who do prayer work and who who do this kind of work, one of the things that we always talk about is turn totally away from the problem. The problem is irrelevant. Perfection is what we seek. Perfection is what we focus on. And so all of that other stuff, we just let it go. We let it go and we let it work out. So I am standing in a space of gratitude and in knowing, and so it is. Yes. And so it is. So yeah, it has been part of the stuff that we are going through in the book that we are working on has been such an eye-opening situation for me. And I love being in a space where I can do the internal work for me, because so much of what we do is we live our lives and we think sometimes that, I don't know about you, but sometimes we are begrudging. We get in a space of of not being happy or not being content. And I don't know, say for instance, I don't know the energy that is around you in your life, but so many people, we look at images in different places, whether we're looking on our social media feeds, or we're looking on TV or TikTok now. And we, and a lot of times we get caught up in what we don't have or what we can't do, or, all of these other things. We see other people and then we get discontent, and it's so interesting, because one of the things that I had a girlfriend one time say to me, she was like, oh, one of the reasons why our friendship is so special is because you don't get jealous of me. And I sat there and I thought about that for a minute, and I was like, what is, my thought was, this is my thought, what is there to be jealous about, right? And one of the things that I think that we don't recognize is what our own purpose is. My purpose and my desire for my life, good morning, Ruth, my desire for my life is not hers. I don't want to be in somebody else's shoes. I want to be able to fill out my own desires for my life. And when you get clear about what makes you happy and what you want, I don't think you have time or the space. I don't think you had a capacity to be sitting up looking and tripping over what somebody else does. It's how in my space do I find my contentment? How do I work towards the Sandra that I desire to be? I ain't trying to be Susie Q. I'm not trying to be that. I'm not, I have no desire for that. And so once you get clear on who you are, what makes you happy, what resonates for you, that all of that other stuff falls by the wayside. So if you're sitting up like what's the word called? If you're sitting up looking at somebody else's life and bemoaning your own, if you're sitting up and sitting up wishing and wanting and all of this stuff on somebody else's stuff, what is the word called? It's not envy. It's not, that's not the word. The word is, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of coveting. I don't know. But when you're sitting up tripping over somebody else's stuff, it's you, that means you're not busy doing your own stuff. So get busy doing your own stuff, living your own life, your own dream, and expanding out into that. And if you're not clear about that, what that is, then that's the work to do, right? So I told y'all back at the beginning of the year, somebody had challenged me to write down 20 things that I thought was impossible, right? 20 things that I would desire that I might perceive as impossible. Just write them down. I don't know who asked me to do that exercise. Was it Everett or was it somebody else? I don't even recall who asked me that. I'll have to look in my book and see who told me to write out these 20 things. But I was thinking to myself, like, okay, so not a problem. I can write those 20 things out, right? And as I thought about them, I was thinking to myself, like, my stuff is not, if I was going to lavish, if I was expanding out, right? My stuff is not going to be some little small stuff of wanting what I see somebody else having. Look, I'm gonna tell y'all, what at the top of my list is to be magical, like to have magic. So magic, as I perceive magic, might be for somebody else something else, like click your fingers and and my kitchen is clean, or click my fingers and I'm now on a beach in heck, any place, right? Not Cleveland. But I'm on a beach in Jamaica, right? And feeling that water on my body, right? I mean, I want to do it in an instant so I can collapse time, right? I don't want to have to think about, oh, I got to go to the airport, go through security, sit on a plane for this many hours and then, show up there, check into a hotel. I don't want to think about all of that. I want to, so I don't know what your aspirations are, right? But I want to go bigger. I am bigger and bigger. And so if you were to ask me to think of the impossible right now, I'm saying that would be my impossible that I want to go through to. And do I believe that it's necessarily impossible? I do not. I just think that I don't know how to do it yet. And so that I'm trying to be honest with you. That is where I'm aspiring to. Like, how do I get to that point? How do I get there? Because remember, part of my my awareness, somebody might be saying, oh, she is choking on that, right? Choking on the water. But part of my awareness is that anything, if it has ever been done, can still be done today. And so these ideas that people come up with, I don't believe that, that there is not a foundation for the ideas that we have a desire for. That somewhere they came out of something. And so is that something that was once the truth here on this planet, on this earth, that we have that ability and we've lost it. And so, there are certain things, to me, evidence says that, we had greater abilities than what we have now. And so as I stand in that space, I'm standing in that space with the excavation mindset that, okay, I just haven't found it yet. And so what is it that needs to shift in me? What is it that needs to change in me, that I begin to experience this, that I begin to, like, in right here, right now, not even have to do anything, not even have to think about it, to see a situation healed, to see a person healed. All I need to do is do the work on me. If you guys didn't hear that little thing called The Rainmaker that I read the other day out of that book, it bears rereading. It bears going back. If you go back, I don't know exactly what day it was, but I did do it one day this past week. I talked about the Rainmaker. I don't know if I probably read it out of the book, but in this thing, these people were wanting rain. And so they were like, so when this guy made it rain, they were like, oh my God, you did this, you did that. And he was like, no, I didn't do anything. He was like, all I did was I did me. When you get your own house in order, you can't help but bring order to the space around you. So for me, and I mean, so many of you, you can get caught up in your fear thoughts, right? You could get caught up in what's wrong with the world. You could get caught up in looking at the news. You could get caught up in the dramas that people talk about. But the real work is to get settled within. And when you are peace, then you bring peace into a situation. When you are love, A Course in Miracles says, is what's missing is always what you fail to bring. And so when I am going into a space, I'm bringing what I want to find there. I'm not sitting there looking at a speaker or a teacher or somebody else to bring in the energy that is mine to bring. I go to places and I do training now. So I haven't gone anywhere. I've been doing it in front of my computer. But what I do is I do training, right? And so when I go into places, I do have this moment at the end of all of my talks where I ask people, what did I miss, right? That's one of those songs off of the Hamilton soundtrack. What did I miss, right? And so I'm always curious as to what people believe I missed or what I failed to say. Now, here's the flip side of this. If I say to you at the onset, what's missing is always what you fail to bring, because what I do know is while I fancy myself pretty intuitive, I am not a mind reader. So if you have the idea in your mind that something should be said, then it is your responsibility to say it, right? It is not my responsibility to read or to perceive certain things. People will tell you there are certain experiences I have not had. I will be the first to admit. And so that's one of the wonderful things about when I do Morning Glory with Stephanie is that I get to have that moment, because Stephanie she's been a wife for longer than she had been single. She had been a mother. I had not been anybody's wife. As a matter of fact, that was like something like, don't give me that, right? And so she brings a perspective that you are not going to hear me speaking to. And so a lot of times people want you to speak to something that's not in your repertoire. And so if we are being honest, if we are being authentic, then we bring what we know. And so sometimes I bring stuff that I know and that I have experienced, and I'm the exact person that's supposed to be here, but I can hold a space for whatever else it is that you need to bring up. Hold the space, give honor to that, respect it, and then once that's done, just move on. But so often we sit there and we think that it's somebody else's responsibility. Oh, they didn't do this. Oh, they didn't do that. Do yourself, right? Do it yourself. Bring it yourself, and not in a way that is like condescending or like, oh, I know more, I'm more intelligent because I got this perspective. No, it's not about all of that. I didn't say bring your ego. I'm bringing your perspective. Bring your perspective. And when we bring our perspective to the table, it's amazing. So even this book, as we do this, it didn't start with you. I don't feel diminished by talking about the family history that I have, because that family history, like, should stir up something in us, right? It should. When he shared his in the beginning about how he was blind, and this whole journey was because he went blind and he needed to figure out how to get his sight back. It's just what happened to him. There is, if you're judging it, or if somebody is judging it, you miss the point. The point is, I'm sharing my stuff so that maybe you can look at your own stuff and see how that could be playing out in your life. And so for each of us, we have got to figure out, what's in this for me to know? What's in this for me to learn? And when we get this idea that somehow we are perfect, we aren't seeing clearly. Because what I do know is if you were perfect, you probably wouldn't be here on this planet. Because this is a place where we are perfecting, where we are moving into our highest and possible idea of ourselves. Not where we've already achieved that. Now we're just walking from this lofty place of, yeah, no, that is not the way it works, right? There's a story out of India, the Indra. The Indra is this, this being that has, like, gets all caught up in his selfness, what he is and who he thought, and he's commanding people, and he's got all these subjects under him. And so he goes, and I don't know, he asks somebody the question. I forget how the story goes, but the being told him, he was like, yeah, and all the other Indras before you have been, have done that too, or the Indras before. And they're looking at him like, what Indras? What other Indras? I am it. I am he. And he was like, yeah, after about 1,000 others, you are it now, right? And so sometimes we get lost in our ego issues, thinking that, somehow we are perfect, we are it, we are the, the end all be all. But you are just one in a million, right? One in a million. But put here to do what it is that only you can do, right? Only you can do right now. And so, I'm doing my part. As I've been sharing about my grandmother, and her experience, it's as if I reached back to this week, just this week, I reached back and I felt the baton in my hand. When I felt it, I understood it on a different level. And for each of my ancestors, I want to feel that same connection. When I reach back and get that baton, I want to recognize it as if it is for the first time, and then run my race. And all of us have to be about the business of running our race. Oh my gosh, this is, for me, it's so good. And if we could all, it's so interesting, because I don't know that we all recognize or realize that we've got a leg of the race to run that is only ours to do. And so that awareness of it is awesome. When we ask ourselves, and when we ask our ancestors or whatever, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing here? Even if you just like a little inkling, like for me, just, seeing my grandmother's story and in a different perspective, and how might that inform my own? So, and that was my father's mother, right? My mother's mother, really interesting. I knew her very well, right? As a matter of fact, we used to, we occupied the same house for some time. And it was really interesting. She was a Pisces, I'm a Pisces. And as I go through and I dissect her life, which is something that is still unfolding in me. I can see her stuff more in my sister's stuff, right? Or I can see her stuff in different ways in my other sibling stuff than I do in my own. But it was really, even as I used to talk to her, she had this friend. She had a friend who was a housewife. She was a housewife, and my grandmother, who always worked, from she worked until she retired. She was, and I don't want to say that she was a single mother, because that wasn't the case. It's an interesting story. When she had my mother apparently out of wedlock back in the day. And she left her with her grandparents and went to work in the city. So my mother was raised by her grandparents up into a certain age. Then my grandmother got married, and she married this very jealous man. I mean, she would talk about how jealous this guy was, because she would say that she got fired from a job because he wouldn't stop coming up there looking through the window, and even when even if it was somebody that she worked with, one of her co-workers was talking to her, he'd be jumping out from behind the bushes like, oh, why are you talking to her? And she was like talking about how insanely jealous this man was. But this was who she married. This was who she moved to Cleveland with. And it was, and I mean, there was so much stuff that was involved in that, and the time that she then tried to reclaim her position in my mother's life. All of that was really interesting and unfolding. And while she spent the rest of my days living in proximity, the rest of her days living in proximity to my mother, it was interesting because it was almost as if my mother always called her mother and never called her anything other than like mother, as if like you may have birthed me, but you were not my mommy. You were not my mom. You were just my mother. And so it's a really interesting dynamic of how all of that played out. And I think that was in part why my mother wanted to have so many children. My mother was like saying if she could have had 10, she would have had 10, and never thought, not once did it come into her mind that she would ever leave her children with anybody anywhere at any time. Like that was just not her thing. So there was things that she did in response to what was done. So there's so much stuff that plays out. Now, how does that manifest? How does that come into manifestation in my life today? And so those are the challenges that we grow through as we do work like this. It's like, let me look at the details, the overriding details of my, whether it's your grandmother, your grandfather, sometimes it's uncles and aunts, but to look at the details, especially when it's something traumatic, it may jump into your family line, right? If you're experiencing depression, or if you got issues around abandonment issues or whatever, looking at the people that are in your life that that may impact or influence your life. It's looking at that and then understanding, what does that mean for me? If you had somebody who was killed or lynched or had some other real trauma too, what is it that they were doing? What is it that they were about that still begs to have a voice in your life today? As if you are the mouthpiece or the center point of their issue or their passion today. So it's looking at all of these things and then figuring out where you fit into the scenario. And that you do is not in question. It is just how that's showing up for you. And so when I ask myself the question, how are these issues showing up in my life? And I'm not looking at them as if they're all negative, because they're not. Sometimes they are just that baton that's been passed to me. Let me see how it is that I'm supposed to play this out, what part mine is. And all of this is part of this wonderful spiritual fabric that is our lives, right? Sometimes we want to just make it seem like there's what we do on Sundays, or there's what we do in these little pockets, but this is our everyday stuff. And so we've got to bring this awareness into the moment that we are living. And how does it inform what we're doing? How does it inform this moment, this situation? I think all of this stuff is amazing. I'm always curious as to how it lands for you, how it feels for you. And even as you pass your baton forward, what is it that you perceive yourself as passing forward, right? And how do we get those nuances, right? So say for instance, I could tell you that I talk about this all the time, right? That my dad was always asking me when I was going to get married. And I talked about how I needed to receive that and then, hear it and massage it in a way that I could accept, right? And so what I chose to do was hear, Sandy, I love you, right? And so when you think about it from your perspective, what is it that you are trying to push forward that may seem like it's like, yeah, that's not mine, right? And so sometimes people in our lineage will actively reject what it is that you're giving, right? The gift that you feel like you're giving, the insight that you feel like you're giving, they will actively reject it. And so the thing is to also be aware of what might be at the core of that connectedness, what might be at the core of it. And so when we start to see it from that perspective, right? When we start to look at it, my sister talks about often how my grandmother used to always tell her, ooh, she would say stuff like, ooh, you could pass. You should, you could. And she was always doing that to my sister, which my sister was like actively against, like, yeah, that's that old school stuff that I'm not even on, right? But what was that too? What was that saying? So just like I was hearing my dad say, Sandy, I love you, my sister could have transformed the message that she was receiving to ask a question about what part of my grandmother felt like she wasn't able to experience the life that she wanted to because of her skin color or because of the way that she looked? What part of her needed to keep reiterating those ideas? And so as we look at it from a different perspective and get a inkling of that, and because, you know, and she used to say it in a way like, I'm giving you a gift, I'm giving you an insight, I'm giving you something that is precious. And, you know, but it wasn't received that way. And so the question becomes, what's that about, right? Why is that? Why is that? Not to summarily reject it, but to hear what is not only what's said, but what's not said, what's beneath the words, what's beneath that emotion, what's beneath it. And so all of us can be about the business of tuning our ears in to hear better. We are so used to people drawing conclusions for us that we don't have the capacity. A lot of people don't have the capacity to think beyond what appears on the surface. But we've got to learn to listen to what's not said as well as to what's said. Is there something that is undergirding this, right? Don't get caught in your unaware. Bring your full attention and your openness to this. We started out talking about opening and expanding into what's possible. Bring the expansion thought into it. One of the things that I loved about that book, Fear of a Black Universe, is that this guy was talking about how when he was doing his research, he was like, I couldn't be up in the clouds or amongst the stars or out of the atmosphere to do the work that I needed to do. He said some of that was just that I needed to lie and repose, to just sit in, or, you know, just lay someplace and imagine. And he says, and as I laid somewhere and allowed my mind to expand into what is possible, he's like, he got some amazing insights. And what we don't do is a lot of times is we don't allow ourselves the ability to imagine. One of the things that Henry Ford said is that he used to sit for ideas. He would go into a room with a table, a chair, and a, you know, paper and a pencil, and he would sit for ideas. And that sitting for ideas meant that he had to enter into an imaginal realm where he took what, you know, what he knew, but he then had to go beyond that. And so a lot of times we have to go beyond what it is and where it is that we find ourselves to be. What's possible? What's at the other end? And so as we sit in the possibility of things, expand then into that. If your calling is to do healing work, or if your calling is to do, you know, do any number of things, right? So if it's talking, if it's training, if it's ministry, if it's, you know, any number of things. We can, you know, whether it's to make something beautiful, make something easy, be an inventor, whatever it is, how do we imagine ourselves into a bigger idea of that? And here's the interesting thing too, because one of the things that we do, I had a friend of mine that was working for a company, and I didn't mean to stay on here this long. I meant to get off earlier. But he was working for a company, and this company had the idea that anything that he created while he was employed by them became their property. Like they had, you know, the way that it was set up, anything that he thought of and created then became theirs, their domain, which was problematic for him because there was stuff that he didn't want to relinquish to them because he wanted to have autonomy over his thoughts and ideas. But because of his work situation, he did not. And so a lot of times he would think like, ooh, this is too good. right? Oh, this is going to be big. And pull back or want to stuff the plans for it in a drawer. Well, here's what I know about spirit. When it's time for something to come forth, spirit doesn't just like, spirit has this thing like, oh, Sandra's a good person that's going to say this, right? And so spirit might have this idea that Sandra's going to say it. Sandra said it, right? That Sandra's going to say it. And so they give it to me. Now, if I suppress that, if I don't share it, if I don't do something with it, it's not that spirit says, oh, well, dang, I missed the ball or I made a mistake on that one. No, spirit jumps from me to the next person and says, okay, let's see what they're going to do with this, right? Because it will not be denied. And so the very thing that he was thinking that he invented, right? When he stuffed it in a drawer, put it in an envelope, mailed it to himself with a stamp on it so that he could then pick it up later, what happened is that it came through anyway. Somebody else invented that thing anyway. And he's sitting up there looking at his plans, thinking to himself, like, wonder who got a hold of my plans. No, it wasn't that somebody else got a hold of your plans. It was that the idea comes from spirit and it has to be expressed. That is what it does. And so if you don't do it, somebody else will. And so all of this stuff, we think that we got some corner on the market, but we just gotta do it. Now, if that is the case with you, if that's the case with you, that somebody else has claim to your intellectual property, the question is not how to suppress it. The question is how do I get from under that I've contracted myself to do? Because that's not going to be it wasn't the first time he got an idea. It's not going to be the last time he got an idea. But if you are not in a position to receive that on your own, then you got to do what you got to do. Because I don't know if it would have been sufficient or not to have his name on it. Maybe and I'm sure that drug companies do this all the time. A person works on something and it's their baby. They birthed it, they brought it into the universe. But Pfizer sticks their name on it, or Lubrizol sticks their name on it. Somebody else sticks their name on it. And the fact that you worked so hard on that particular project gets lost in the sauce. Well, sometimes that's how we set ourselves up. And so the question is how do we position ourselves in a way that we get to capitalize off of what we did, what we do? And so, for me, I sit here and I do what I do. And I trust that as I give, I receive. It is all part of the process. And so to the degree that I am withholding, what happens is somebody picks it up and runs with that ball. It really is what happens. And so I might as well just go ahead and just put it out there. Right? Maybe they'll, people will be aware, oh, Sandra said that. Sandra said it, right? Maybe they'll be aware of that, maybe not. But ideas aren't mine, right? And the more I give, the more I receive. So I want to be caught in being a part of that wonderful process, that wonderful conduit that says, ooh, it comes through here and it keeps on going. So it's not always about the financial piece at the end. It is about what we birth into the world. I think, I'm birthing something, right? All right, y'all, I have got to go. I am going to Renaissance Unity today for a class that starts at 10 o'clock. I think this is the first one. And I'm going to that. And then as soon as I leave out of there, the class that I was talking about at the beginning of the hour that is out in California starts. So in California, it starts at 9 a.m. Here for me, it starts at noon. And so I'll plan on walking out of that. Thank you, Ruth. You have an excellent Saturday too. Namaste. So I plan on walking out of that particular class and then into the other one, which is on Zoom. And yeah, it'll be what it'll be. It'll be amazing. It's busy day, but amazing day. I didn't sleep well last night thinking to myself about how I got all this stuff back to back. So I'm going to jump off of here so I can get ready to get out of here and go make this happen. So stay warm or not. You know, if cold is your thing, go on out there and get in it, make it happen. But hold a space for seeing the perfection in Stephanie's granddaughter, Syven. Yeah, just see it as done. You don't even have to know what she looks like or anything else. Her name is Syven. She is Stephanie's granddaughter. And I see her perfection right here and right now. All right. All right. So, amen. I will see you tomorrow. I'll be here at 1 o'clock. Otherwise, on Monday, I'll be back at 7:30ish with Stephanie in tow. So have an excellent day. Blessings, peace and blessings to you all. And wherever you go, may love and abundance just litter your path wherever you go. And so it is. All right, see ya. And I am out.